Hey everyone, what is going on? And welcome back to another meta guide. So we have the Great League. Yep, the Great League is coming back. Technically it's already available, but it's when all the leagues are available. So for the next 2 weeks it's going to be around again. Usually I do a meta guide for each open league for the Great Ultra Master League twice a season. At the beginning of the season and then the middle of the season. So welcome to the middle of the season and we have the Open Great League. Nothing has changed, of course. So no new moves or anything like that. Hopefully next season, but let's go ahead and dive right into it and see what we got going on for us. So for the S rank, of course, Galarian Stunfisk. You all know it. Galarian Stunfisk is a great Pokemon. You all know what it does. Same with Registeel. Such a powerful Pokemon. Registeel is so good at getting shields, right? It just gets, even from like fighters, even like Medicham, it can either get a shield. It depends. It really depends. It kind of does rely on that debuff a little bit, but a lot of the times it's a 66% chance. The odds are in your favor to get the debuff. It's not a guarantee, but great Pokemon all around. Registeel, definitely good to see it. Lantern, ever since it received that Surf, I believe it was last season or was it 2 seasons ago? Whenever it got the Surf attack, it became meta, especially since last season. The Wing Attack buff flies are a lot stronger. That also helped Lantern. So Lantern, a great Pokemon. Swampet's always been around with that powerful Hydro Cannon. Such a great Pokemon. Medicham being the best fighting type in the Open Great League, in my opinion. We have some other good ones, but Medicham has always dominated. Lickitung is another great one. I guess because of the flying buff, as I've mentioned in the past meta guide videos, Lick is double resisted. So if you're going up against Noctowl or Pidgeot, obviously those moves are double resisted, the Lick, so it might struggle a little bit because of that, but it's still a great Pokemon. Noctowl is a great Pokemon, of course. With that Wing Attack buff, gets to the moves that much faster, right? And it walls some popular Pokemon like Trevenant, but of course it has to watch out for Steel types. But even against the Steel types, it still has play with that Shadow Ball. So moving on to the A rank, we have Altaria. Altaria is a great flying type. I think Noctowl passed it last season thanks to Wing Attack buff, but Altaria is still a great Pokemon for sure. Then we have Bastiodon. You all know Bastiodon. Everyone's favorite Pokemon. If it goes up against something at walls like a flyer, you're just going to be able to farm all the way down. It's that tanky. But, on the other hand, it is double weak to like fighting. And it's weak to ground as well. So it does have weaknesses. Obviously, like Registeel will do well against it because it has Focus Blast. So you don't want it up against anything like that. But it's still really strong, and it probably will always be. I don't know how you would nerf it. You would have to go after its stats to nerf it, to be honest, and they don't do that. They only go after attacks. But even if you nerf SmackDown, it doesn't matter, because like if you're up against like an Altaria, you could take 100 Sky attacks and still live. Maybe not 100, but you get the point. You're still going to be able to farm down even if they nerf SmackDown, which I don't see them doing anyway. So Bastiodon, I don't see how they could nerf it, right? They would have to buff things that are really strong against it, I guess. And then Scrafty, another great fighting type, of course. Medicham, I do think it's a little bit better, but Scrafty definitely does have some play. And then we have Trevenant. Trevenant is a really good Pokemon. A little bit less so ever since last season, the Wing Attack buff, of course, with that Noctowl, but still really strong. Obviously has a lot of positive matchups. Sableye is another one. It's another one, I guess, kind of like Lickitung. Of course, the Shadow Claw is double resisted by the Noctowl, but still really great safe swap. It could still do well even against things that do well against Sableye because of that return, like Noctowl and Umbreon. It could still hit for a lot of damage against Scrafty, right? A lot of times Scrafties or Obstagoons do shield the Sableye because you could possibly flip switch if you land the return, even Azuma, right? That's how good Sableye is. It needs to be purified, of course. Another Pokemon that benefited from the Wing Attack buff is going to be my best friend Pelipper. Absolutely love Pelipper. It was nerfed once upon a time, and then it received that buff last season, so it's just as good as ever, if not better. Really good Pokemon. Obviously, has to watch out for Lantern. That's what made Lantern even better this season, or last season, I should say. But, other than that, looking really good. For the B rank, we have Diggersby. Diggersby did get, it wasn't debuffed this season, but kind of last season because of the buff to Wing Attack. Obviously, if you're running Earthquake and Fire Punch, the Noctowl, the Pidgeot, the Charizard can take those attacks well, but if you're running Hyper Beam will do really well. Guzzlord is a really good one with Dragon Tail. Pretty good Pokemon. I really like Guzzlord as an Ultra Beast, really strong Pokemon. Then we have Scummy. Scummy is good. It does get walled by some of the popular Steel types, like Registeel, but, it's still a really good one. Pidgeot did receive that Wing Attack buff. Of course, it had Gust in the past, and it still has Gust, but I personally like Wing Attack, to be honest with you. Wing Attack, Feather Dance, Brave Bird. I love having Pidgeot in the back because if you get your opponent down to the last Pokemon, you land that Feather Dance, you're debuffing your opponent permanently, right, for the rest of the game. That is absolutely amazing. So double debuff permanently. I love doing that. I do it a lot in the Ultra League. I love it. I love Pidgeot. And then we have Azumarill. So Azumarill, of course, you know what? Azumarill was nerfed with Bubble. Obviously, they buffed things like Registeel's Zap Cannon or even Lantern. Became really good. Nidoqueen, I guess, was nerfed, but at one point it was really good. They buffed things to make Azumarill not as popular or as strong as it once was, and I guess that is true. That did happen, but Azumarill still has play in the Open Great League. That's how good it is. So that's gonna be the SA and B tier for you. Let's move on to the other options. We have another fighting type. We have Toxicroak. So Toxicroak used to be one of the OG fighting types back in like Season 1, Season 2. Great Pokemon. Still a great Pokemon, but we have some better fight. I think, like, obviously Medicham Scripty I like more, but Toxicroak has that high attack. It's just not as bulky, right? And then Alola Ninetales, you could run this with Powder Snow or Charm. Both are good depending on your team comp. Runerigus, I think Runerigus is decent. It's okay. It could be a lot of fun to use for sure. Mantine is another one. It did also receive that wing attack buff as well because it does have wing attack as a fast move. I like Pelipper more, but if you're looking for the bulk, Mantine is definitely a good way to go. Wolverine was buffed a couple seasons ago with that Icicle Spear. It was nerfed. Still a really, really strong Pokemon, though. Kommo-o, yet another Dragon Tail user. See it more in the Ultra League, but it's still a pretty powerful Pokemon. We have Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz and Umbreon. Both of them are tanky. They both generally do the same thing. Obviously, they don't necessarily share the same weaknesses because, Mandibuzz is a flying type, Umbreon is not. So Umbreon's not weak to ice where Mandibuzz is. But still, I mean, they're both really, really tanky. Both have Snarl. Both can get off those powerful dark attacks like Dark Pulse or Foul Play. So both of them are really, really strong. I kind of wish they gave Sky Attack to Mandibuzz. That would make it better, obviously, than Aerial Ace. But should they do that? I don't know. I feel like, it's so annoying to go up against unless if you have a hard answer to it sometimes. So, maybe not. Then we have Toxapex. Toxapex is another really interesting Pokemon. I think it's pretty good. It's super bulky. It just doesn't really have the attacks. Poison Jab and Sludge Wave are really good. Brine, it would be nice if it had a better water attack, I guess. But it's still a really good Pokemon, and it can do well against certain things. We talked about Umbreon. Steelix is another one. It did receive it does have Dragon Tail. It received the Psychic Fangs during one season. So then you can either have Crunch or Earthquake, depending on your team. Vigoroth is a great counter user, super spammy with the Body Slam, and Defense Deoxys. Defense Deoxys is still really good. Obviously, it has to watch out, right, for the ghost types like Trevenant, like Sableye, Runerigus if you happen to go up against it, but it's still a really good Pokemon. So that's going to be the Open Great League for you. Let's go ahead and move on to the solid team options. So for the first team, it's going to be an OG team, but I've seen it the past few seasons as well. Altaria in the lead with Registeel and Toxicroak. So I think this is a great team. Obviously, if you lose the lead, like Galarian, Stunfisk, Registeel, that's not good. Bastiodon, I guess you go into the Registeel there, because Registeel, even against Galarian Stunfisk, it still has play, right? Because of that Focus Blast will do a lot of damage. Generally speaking, I would say that Registeel is a safe swap, keeping that Toxicroak in the back for later. But, it's a great team. It's an OG team. I've actually used this team back in the original season, I think, Season 1, Season 2. But as I mentioned, I've seen it recently. I've used it like the other season, like a season ago or something, and I did have success with it. The next team is going to be a classic team, a traditional team, Swampert, with Sableye as a safe swap, and then Skarmory. Now, I've seen this team with Skarmory in the lead and Swampert in the back. I've seen this team with Shadow Drapion instead of Sableye as a safe swap. You could go that route if you're concerned with the normal flyers like Noctowl. So if you want to go Drapion, you could do that. I personally love Sableye for like the fighters like Medicham. But of course you also have Skarmory, I guess, for Medicham. But still, great team all around. I think it's a really powerful team. The next up, we have a double flying team in the back with Noctowl and Pidgeot. You could go with maybe another flyer instead of Pidgeot, like Pelipper. But as I mentioned earlier, I love the Pidgeot in the back to debuff your opponent's last Pokemon permanently. Feels so good to do that, right? And then Lantern in the lead. Obviously, the back line is going to struggle to Steel types. because the moves are going to be resisted besides the Shadow Ball from Noctowl. Lantern going to be doing pretty well. You could run Water Gun on Lantern if you want to. Bashiodon, I guess, is kind of an issue for this team. But if you have Water Gun, you're doing super effective damage towards it. You know, the backline is going to wall Trevenant, and Trevenant is really common, whereas Lantern is weak to it. So I think this team generally works out pretty well, and I used it myself. And when we first got the wing attack buff, I think early last season, and it did well for me. The next team we have Galarian Stunfisk in the lead with Venusaur and Pelipper. Pelipper generally being the safe swap. Just gotta watch out for that Lantern, I'm telling you. But other than that, I think Pelipper's a great safe swap as long as you don't really run up against Lantern. I mean, you could even beat Registeel with Pelipper. You would have to invest shields. It all depends if you want to. But I'm just saying, like, you have play with Pelipper a lot. Obviously, Weather Ball is a great bait move. Hurricane is a great nuke move. And then Venusaur, if you happen to run into a water type, like the Lantern, Venusaur will do well against that. But no, overall, a good team. The next team is going to be Pelipper Double Steel. Now, I did hit Legend with this team last season. So Pelipper Double Steel, obviously, you need to lure out the fighting type. Usually that's with Registeel, because if you have a bad lead, I would recommend going into the Registeel, because even if they respond with Medicham, as I mentioned earlier in the video, you can a lot of times get a shield with Zap Cannon. It all depends. If they have Power Up Punch, it's more difficult. But if they don't have Power Up Punch, which I would say most Medicham don't run Power Up Punch, but if they do run Power Punch, obviously it's more difficult. But the Zap Cannon, you want the debuff, and then you could usually get to a Focus Blast to force a shield to at least get shield advantage in that situation, and then maybe farm down to Pelipper. Galarian Stunfisk with shield advantage usually does well. So unless if it's double fighters, this team works really well. As I said, I climbed a lot with this team. I hit Legend with it last season. Very, very powerful team. Instead of the Pelipper, you could go with Sableye. Sableye also does well against the fighters, right? You would do better against Deoxys. Should you happen to see it, most of the time Deoxys is in the lead. But even the backline does well against Deoxys, because Galarian Stunfisk resists all the charge moves from Deoxys. Registeel resists the charge moves besides Thunderbolt. They're both weak to counter, but generally speaking, yeah, that's a thing. Although if you do go Sableye, you're going to struggle to Obstagoon and Scrafty, so keep that in mind. I would probably stick with the Pelipper, but no. So moving on to the final team, we have Medicham in the lead with Diggersby as a safe swap and Noctowl. So because of the wing attack buff we received last season, I'd probably be tempted to run Hyper Beam. Now, if you do run Hyper Beam, the backline, both of them will struggle to Bashiodon, but the opponent will not know you're running Hyper Beam, right? So if you swap into Diggersby, and they're not going to respond with a Bashiodon if they have it, because they're going to think that's a terrible matchup, right? So I think Hyper Beam, they would respond with like a Noctowl or a Pidgeot or another Flyer Charizard. Then you could hit him with that Hyper Beam. I think Hyper Beam for this team would work out really well. But either way, that's going to be the Open Great League for you. Let me know which league you're going to be playing. We're going to have the meta guide on the other league that begins tomorrow. I don't remember the league off the top of my head, but I will have that video as well later on today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good day. Bye.